Hello, everyone. I'm Father Rocco Porter from Christ the King Parish in Denver, and I'd like to talk about and prepare us for the upcoming season of Lent. And Lent has always been a time in my house as I was growing up as to figure out like what we were going to do, what we were going to give up, kind of the way in which we enter into Lent is just by dealing with who we are and how we want to be better. Which all that is great and probably necessary in our lives, but I also think that Lent can be so much more. And I think it's beautiful that Pope Leo has declared this year as a year to kind of honor St. Francis of Assisi, who of course dedicated his life to serving the poor, serving his community, and honoring creation. And so I would kind of like to bring that aspect into our lives during Lent of how we honor St. Francis by kind of how we take on some of his spiritual practices during the season of Lent. And I think for St. Francis, obviously was very humble. Didn't require much at all. His life was dedicated to just really serving God in the best way he could. But in doing that, I think what he discovered was not only poverty in the world, but even his own poverty and the poverty of his own humanity. And because of that, it made him a better person, because that's where he found Jesus Christ, was in serving the poor, but discovering his own poverty and bringing Christ with him in that poverty, not relying on himself, but relying more on Christ. So I would like to think that maybe this Lent, we would kind of discover our own poverties. Oftentimes when we think of poverty, we think poverty is those who financially need help, or that where we just don't have enough resources to live a comfortable life. But I think there's so many other areas of poverty in our life that it's interesting and would be worth kind of just discovering those poverties. And maybe that's where Christ wants to meet us this Easter after we finish Lent. So one of those ways I think in poverty is the poverty of our spirit. In the spiritual poverty, I think we can all attest to the fact that we would love to spend a life in prayer, but we don't know how to do that. And sometimes it's hard to just even spend a few moments in prayer. Sometimes just give up time in our day to think about Christ from time to time. And I think that is a true poverty, because Christ really does wait for us, and he does wait for us to come and be with him. And he desires so much to be in relationship with us. And yet he's so patient. He just is constantly waiting for that moment we try to connect with him. So maybe our connection with our faith, our connection with Jesus Christ, is where we're finding poverty. And Lent might be a time to not give something up, but maybe to add a particular time for prayer. Certain types of prayer. We know that there's many types of prayer. And maybe it's just that moment of we'll make a more conscious effort to invoke Christ into our day. And maybe it's just maybe whatever we encounter in our day, we just ask the Lord to be there with us. And that in and of itself can be prayer. I think sometimes we think that we have to perfect something before we can bring it to Christ. And I think it's in that imperfection where we meet Christ even more. And so don't be afraid of discovering your poverty in spirit, in prayer, in life in general, because I think that's how we can grow in our relationship with Jesus Christ. Another area in our life that I think we discover poverty is poverty in just human relationships. With all the social media, all the stuff going on in the world, we have every information at our fingertips. We can find videos, we can Google things, we can get on social media and connect with other human beings through that. But is it real connection, and is it the connection that we really need? I think we need to spend more time with human contact, human relationships, in being physically present to others, especially as families. How much time do we waste just sitting on computers or on our phones or on our tablets, searching videos and searching other things, or talking to people in using social media? I think we need better relationships than that. Maybe Lent would be a time to just think about how much time we're spending using social media, and maybe even giving some of that time up and really engaging in personal conversations and one-on-one time with family members, spending time with each other, having real conversations, person to person, or just even in groups. How many times do I go to a restaurant and see husbands and wives sitting across from each other, totally on their phone and not even having a conversation with each other? It's like we're afraid to have personal conversations anymore because we don't know what we're going to say, or we don't have time to think about it, or I don't know what that is. So we fill our silence with this time on social media. And I think it would be a good time that could also open up time for more prayer, but I think it could also open up more time to have better conversations with each other. I think another area where a lot of people discover poverty in their life is just the poverty of time itself. We are so busy doing so many things. If you're married and have children, you're thinking about the next place you have to drop off your child, or pick your child up, or take him to the next thing, or things like that. Plus you run busy days if you have work time and all of that. But what if we just took the time to meet Christ in a time that we're not necessarily thinking that we're going to meet him? So it's like, it doesn't have to be where we're just find time to be silent and sit down with the Lord. It can be a moment where you just bring the Lord with you, and that if that's on the way to dropping your child off to school, or maybe a time where you're taking someone to a sports practice or whatever. But in that time in the car, why not invoke a prayer to Jesus and just invite Jesus into that moment, and meet Christ there? So many times we just kind of run our lives and let our lives run us, and we don't even recognize that Christ is there and desires to be there with us. So I think maybe just that personal time with family, with friends, or even with Jesus Christ, that time is important. And there's never going to be enough of it. So we have to take the time that we have and use it in the best way we can. And that's what I think would be more pleasing to the Lord than just letting our lives run us. Maybe one last area of poverty that we discover, there's probably many areas, but maybe a more common area of poverty is just that that time that we can spend educating ourselves in our faith. The time with the Bible, reading the Bible, learning about the faith, going through the catechism, maybe just listening to a podcast that we feel inspired by, that helps draw us closer to Jesus Christ. Maybe we need to spend more time doing those things, especially if we're going to use social media. There's good ways to use those things to help draw us into a deeper relationship with Christ and lead us closer to Christ. I think if we take the time to get to know Jesus Christ, how much easier is it going to be to trust in him with everything in our life? But we're trying to run our lives the best way we can, and we usually find ourselves doing that alone. And that's where we find ourselves in spiritual desolation. We need Christ so much. I don't think we even comprehend how much we actually need him. But if we can just take the moment to just slow things down in our life and maybe get rid of some of the distractions that are in our life that keep us away from the Lord, and maybe just trying to remove one or two of those things, or adding something to our day, our life, that draw us closer to the Lord. Then I think that Easter experience, when Lent is over, is going to mean something so much more than if we just gave up sweets or sodas or coffee or whatever. I think the practice of Lent should be something that makes us yearn and want more of Christ in our life. And if giving up coffee is going to draw you to that place where you're going to want to desire Christ more, then by all means give up coffee. But if there's something else you could be doing, and you know is going to bring you closer to the Lord, then I suggest we try those things this year for Lent. They're going to be much more enriching. They're going to help us feel much more connected spiritually to Christ and to our community and to our families. And I think God just has so much more for us, that we've only discovered a little bit of that beauty that Christ has waiting for us at the Easter moment, at that time of his resurrection. So maybe for Lent, it's not so much what we can give up, but what we can do, and what we can do out of love for the Lord. And if we can grow in our love for him, then I think we'll feel more fulfilled at that Easter moment when Christ rises from the dead, that we'll have a bigger heart of gratitude and have a larger capacity to be loved by him. And in that way, I think we can trust in him more and not feel like we're always alone in the things that we do, that our lives have purpose, they have meaning, and they can grow into bigger and better things because we're doing it with Christ and not by ourselves. My prayer for all of us this Lent is that we enter into it with an open heart and an open spirit, asking the Lord where he desires to be more a part of my life, that in listening to him, that he will draw me closer to him and help me strive for the ways that desires more of him in my life. And in that, I think at the Easter time, when you find yourself closer to Christ, you are going to find yourself in a greater glory, understanding his tremendous love, his tremendous mercy, and his tremendous graces that he has waiting for you.